through at the airports. We need to give up on that and not tolerate it.
End the police state.
But safety and security does drive a lot of people into giving up to sacrifice. Some people want physical safety, some other people want economic safety. Now, I don't know of anybody, I've never met even those in Washington, and there's plenty there that are very controversial, but most, especially most of them, have good intentions on wanting to help people, make sure that they can be taken care of. But if you study history and look at the more socialistic and the more authoritarian a society, the more poor people there are, and the worse the environment is taken care of with bigger and bigger government. But guess what? The societies who've had the maximum amount of freedom have had the maximum amount of prosperity, the largest middle class, and the most personal liberty. That was United States. It used to be that way, and it isn't that way now, and that should be our goal. The maximum amount of prosperity for the maximum number of people, no special benefits and bailouts for the super rich.
Bravo! Woo!
And yet today, this is the crisis of what we feel, because our middle class is shrinking. The people on fixed incomes are getting poorer. Our standard of living has gone down for more than 10 years. People are not getting wealthier. There have been no significant improvement in jobs, in real jobs, in these past 10 years. So although most people recognize our crisis economically occurred in the last 4 or 5 years, actually I believe it's been going on since the year 2000. If you look at the statistics, it's been going down here. Real wages aren't going up, real jobs are going down, and people are struggling. Debt is the problem. We have come to believe, because we've been taught so long at our universities, that spending and inflating the currency is a good thing for the economy. It isn't. It's old-fashioned work and efforts and savings that has to make a country wealthy.
Exactly. Teach it.
Now, the government does have a responsibility for that, and that is to protect those principles. That is that they're not responsible for creating jobs and redistributing wealth, but they should have a lot to say about it, like protecting contracts, not destroying contracts and interfering and breaking up contracts. Live by the laws of the marketplace. They're not supposed to be able to inflate the currency and destroy the currency, and they're not supposed to over-regulate us to death and not to overtax us. So if you want an incentive system to work where you can go out and you're rewarded for hard work and effort and savings, means you have to recognize once again the basic principles of liberty. Our lives come from a creator, or to us in a natural way. Our liberties come to us in the same way, and therefore it should follow that the fruits of our labors are ours and not the government's. The way so many of these things start was only be a little bit and we're going to soak the rich. That's how the income tax started. But it's the principle that is wrong. If the government can say that we're going to only tax you 1%, they're establishing the principle that they have control over 100% because they're deciding what percent you get to keep. So therefore, we need to reestablish the principle that what you earn and what is yours and not the government's to be taken from you. That's where productivity comes from, and yet so many people get drifted into this thing, well, there's some people who are going to be poor and we have to help them. But the whole problem there is this entitlement notion is not a right. Because some people come along and say, oh, well, I'm entitled to a job, a free house, a free education, free medical care. Well, you're not entitled to it because somebody has to take it from somebody else.
Teach it.
And the other thing that happens is the entitlement system, they throw crumbs to the poor, and the rich get richer. And the housing bubble is a perfect example. First, the Fed creates a lot of credit and say, we're going to make the credit available through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and everybody's going to get a house. Oh, there's some people who don't qualify. Well, we'll lower the qualifications and we'll force you to make these loans. And then there are the mortgage companies and the building companies and the bankers, and they get involved and they see all this credit slushing around. They get involved in the derivatives market and they make billions and billions of dollars. It's very obvious a bubble is there, but they say, oh yeah, but look at what we're doing for the poor people. They all have houses and the price of the houses are going up and they keep borrowing against their equity. This is the golden age of permanent prosperity, yeah, until the obvious bubble bursts. And then what happens? Who comes crawling to the government? The people who've been making all the money. And then they get the bailout, and the middle class loses their jobs and they lose their house. The entitlement system doesn't work. What we need is have honesty with government, honesty with money, and honesty with allowing people to keep the fruits of their labor.
Bravo!
The one thing about the whole concept of liberty and how freedom brings us together, I have said, and I absolutely believe it, I think freedom is popular. I think it's popular with everybody. And it is, once you understand this, it should bring us all together, no matter how we want to use our freedom. There's been too many in the nanny state business who says that, well, we can't trust everybody to spend their money the way they want. They might not do a good job. And we can't certainly allow you to practice personal social habits because you might do things, you might smoke or drink something we don't want you to. So we have to guide you to make you better people and make it a better economy. But if you understand liberty, if you understand that you have a right to your life and the fruits of your labor, this should bring us all together as long as we're not judgmental. Because if you legalize something, if you legalize personal behavior or religious beliefs or intellectual pursuits, that doesn't mean we for a minute endorse what people do. We generally recognize this in religious behavior. People can have different religious beliefs. We don't put people in jail for that. And also if people have no religious beliefs. So we sort of bring people together this way. But as soon as it comes to personal habits, as soon as it comes to spending your money, then we have these do-gooders. They're on both sides of the aisle. They're due back and forth. And the job that we have as promoters in this freedom movement is to bring people together, bring diverse people together and say it's in all our interest to defend liberty, and you get to decide how you want to use your liberty any way you want.
Ron Paul, 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 Ron Paul.
Of course, the one major precondition on using your liberty, you can do things that might harm yourself, but you can't do things that will harm your neighbor. And that's a big difference. But when it is assumed that the government is there to protect you against yourself and against your own decisions, that's when there's nothing left. And we're in that category right now. The government is so involved in everything that we do. That's why you have DEA agents coming and arresting people and throwing them in prison and forgetting about it. But that's just one episode. That's just happening all the time. This whole notion that these drug laws have to be enforced regardless. We have a couple hundred of these operations, these sting operations, these break-ins, these SWAT teams, 200 a day. And you can rest assured that it's not with proper search warrants and proper conditions, but the whole idea that they're going to make things better is the problem. But it's that violation that comes, and the founders were pretty astute about this. They didn't want a national police force, yet even before 9/11, over 100,000 U.S. bureaucrats carried guns. The bureaucrats had to carry guns to enforce all these laws. So I think our problem is that we just have too many laws.
Teach it.
We have 5% of the population and 25% of the prisoners. So I would say, well, American people aren't any worse than the other country. I think we just have too many laws, and it's the repeal of laws that we have to do. We have to get rid of the laws. But the drug war has been going on for a good many years. Of course, in our early history, there were no drug laws, and then they tried with alcohol. Just think about the alcohol. They actually had enough respect in those times where they knew they had to amend the Constitution to prohibit something. Today, though, they don't even bother, so that's why our task is much greater. But we have to put this effort. But it is tied. It is all tied together. Individual liberty, personal economic liberty, as well as the foreign policy comes together as us defending and understanding why we as individuals are important. Now, we got off on a bad start in our early history. Obviously, the Constitution was a great document, but it was far from perfect because there was obviously the endorsement of slavery and a lot of penalties because you belong to certain groups, and that to a large degree has been rectified. But we should look at this as nobody should ever be penalized because they belong to a group, but they should never get any benefits because they belong to a group either. We should not. I would love to see the day when we don't have hyphenated Americans. One little pet peeve of mine occurs on election night. You know, immediately after the election occurred, there's always this analysis. They say, well, the Hispanics voted this way, the blacks voted this way, the Jewish people voted this way, the white Republicans voted this way. Why aren't we all individuals and not just part of a group? That's what we're saying. What we need to do is bring the people together, and this is why I think the cause of liberty is so important, because we can bring people together. In Washington, even today you'll hear, and we will be challenged in the campaign, well, it sounds like you're not a compromiser. What, don't you think you have to compromise? I said, no, you don't have to compromise. No.
Bravo!
But what you should do is understand how to bring groups of people together because you endorse the same ideas. Because it is our campaign that has a tremendous outreach programs to people who are called independents, who don't belong to political parties, young people who are just looking at the political system. As well as many Democrats. Who knows, there may even be a couple Democrats here today. So, no, I really do believe that the message of liberty can bring people together, and that it is the cause of liberty that does this. So this is what we need to do, rather than saying, well, okay, in the past, when we were a wealthy nation, we had a lot of largesse. And one of the disadvantages of a free society is, ironically, that there's so much wealth that people forget about emphasizing where wealth comes from. So then they gravitate to sending more lobbyists to Washington rather than working more on R&D and producing products. No, they rush to Washington until the treasury is bare, and that is what's happened today. So out of necessity, we are now being forced to think once again about production and where does wealth come from. Because right now we're broke, and the treasury is bare, and the money, although it's still functioning, will no longer function once people lose confidence on this. So there is something major going on, and this is very, very significant. The important thing is the country is changing, and for the most part, I think much better. So I see the people like you who are rallying and saying, enough is enough. It's time we put our foot down and said no more of this big government ruling our lives and policing the world and fighting wars that are undeclared and the printing press is running. It's time to change all that.
President Paul! 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 President Paul!
A revolution in this country is truly going on. It's a peaceful revolution. It's a revolution in ideas, an intellectual revolution, and that was what preceded almost 100 years before our first revolution. So the groundwork has been laid. The intellectuals have studied economics and Austrian economics and sound money and the principles of liberty. We have a better understanding of monetary policy and economics than we did in the 19th century. So when they say we want to go backwards, it annoys me to no end, because if we go back and pick up the pieces, really freedom is a new idea, a couple hundred years where it's been actually tried. It is those who want more government and who